In 1948, American Airlines put the Convair 240 into service and immediately had something no other airline in the world could match: a pressurized, twin-engine airliner designed specifically for the routes that Douglas DC-3 had always struggled with. The 240 was faster, quieter inside, and could carry 40 passengers in a pressurized cabin above the weather. 7 years later, the airline that would use it most memorably wasn't an American carrier at all. On the 1st of April 1955, two Convair 340s took off simultaneously from Munich and Hamburg, and a country that had been banned from powered flight for a decade put its national airline back in the air. The name on the fuselage was Lufthansa. The Convair hadn't been designed for moments like that. It had been designed by a company called Consolidated Vultee Aircraft Corporation, Convair, founded in San Diego in 1943, to solve a practical problem that American Airlines identified in 1945. The DC-3 had served well, but it was unpressurized, underpowered for high-altitude airports, and increasingly cramped for a market expecting something better. American wanted a modern replacement: pressurized, 40 seats, twin engines, suitable for shorter domestic routes. Convair's first attempt, the Model 110, flew in July 1946 and immediately fell short. 30 seats, no pressurization. American told them to go back and do it properly. Convair went back. The redesigned aircraft had a longer, narrower fuselage, pressurization, and enough cabin space for 40 passengers. The naming logic was simple: 2 engines, 40 passengers, CV-240. It flew for the first time on the 16th of March 1947 from San Diego, and it was the first pressurized twin-engine airliner to enter production anywhere in the world. American Airlines had already placed a launch order for 75 aircraft. Western, Continental, Pan American, KLM, and Trans-Australia Airlines followed. The Convair had found its market before it had even finished development. The 240 entered service with American on the 28th of February 1948. By any reasonable measure, it delivered what the airlines had asked for. But United Airlines, which had been watching the type carefully, came to Convair with a more specific request. They needed better high-altitude performance. The 240's wing was simply too small for the thin air above Denver and Salt Lake City, where United ran some of its most important routes. Convair's response was to stretch the fuselage by 4 feet 6 inches, extend the wingspan by 13 feet 7 inches, and fit more powerful Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines rated at 2,400 horsepower each. The result was the CV-340, and it first flew on the 5th of October 1951. The 340 seated 44 passengers. United ordered 52 of them and flew the type for 16 years without a single passenger fatality. That wasn't a marketing claim. It was a verifiable operational record across millions of flying hours on a network that included mountain airports and demanding winter weather. KLM took the type from 1953 until 1963. Braniff, Continental, Northeast, National, and Delta all ordered. Lufthansa, as already noted, used the 340 to put themselves back in business. The CV-340 didn't dazzle anyone. It worked, consistently, on the routes where consistency was the entire point. By the mid-1950s, Convair's engineers could see a problem coming. The British Vickers Viscount was entering service with turboprop engines, and it was noticeably quieter inside the cabin than any piston airliner. Passengers noticed, airlines noticed. Convair's answer was not to build a turboprop. Their development resources were heading toward the Convair 880 jet, but to make the piston aircraft as competitive as possible on passenger comfort. The result was the CV-440 Metropolitan. The prototype, registered N842H, flew on the 6th of October 1955 and went into service with Continental Airlines on the 1st of April 1956. The 440 carried up to 52 passengers, had improved soundproofing using redesigned rectangular exhaust stacks that genuinely reduced cabin noise, tighter engine cowlings, and weather radar as a standard offering. Continental, Braniff, Delta, Eastern, and National took it in the United States. Lufthansa, Swissair, Sabena, SAS, and Iberia ordered it in Europe. Finnair operated the type from 1953 until 1980 without a single accident. By the way, if you're into stories like this, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and there's a lot more coming. The aircraft had a reputation for being straightforward, and in some ways that reputation was deserved. The R2800 double wasp engines were among the most proven piston radials ever built. The same basic engine had powered the P-47 Thunderbolt and the F-4U Corsair during the war. Pilots who had flown the DC-3 found the Convair's systems familiar enough to transition without significant difficulty. The type was honest. It did what it was supposed to do and didn't hide its responses from the crew. What the Convair did require was precision of a kind the DC-3 hadn't demanded to the same degree. At maximum takeoff weight, the 340 and 440 were heavier and faster than the DC-3, which meant energy management on approach mattered more. The aircraft was clean aerodynamically, which was an advantage in cruise, but meant it could carry speed into the landing phase if crews weren't disciplined about configuration management. Pilots transitioning from smaller, slower types found that the aircraft's momentum required forward planning, the kind of planning where delays in establishing descent or extending flaps had consequences at the other end of the approach. North Central Airlines put their first 50 Convair pilots through 40 hours of ground school, with captains completing a minimum of 8 hours in the aircraft before revenue flying began. That wasn't unusual caution, it was the training standard the aircraft required to be flown well. The Convair rewarded professionalism in a specific way. It had almost no tendency to surprise a crew that had done their preparation. Systems failures were handled by a well-documented checklist. The aircraft's behavior in asymmetric engine conditions, one engine out, was manageable, provided crews had maintained their currency and flown the procedures as written. The 340 and 440 were not aircraft that forgave procedural shortcuts, but they were also not aircraft that added difficulty beyond what the procedures were designed to address. For the regional carriers that operated them heavily, that was precisely what made them valuable. The aircraft could be trained to, standardized across a fleet, and relied upon to perform consistently when the procedures were followed. The jet age arrived publicly on the 26th of October, 1958, when Pan American flew the Boeing 707 from New York to Paris. Within 2 years, the 707 and the Douglas DC-8 were reshaping the long-haul market, and the attention of the aviation press moved almost entirely toward jets. The Convair 340 and 440 did not appear on magazine covers. They did not appear in airline advertising campaigns designed to attract passengers on the basis of glamour. They continued doing what they had always done, flying shorter routes, serving smaller cities, carrying passengers who needed to get somewhere that the new jets wouldn't bother with. The turboprop conversion program extended the Convair's working life by 2 decades. The Allison Engine Company had been testing turboprop installations on a Convair 240 as early as 1949, using engines that would later power the Lockheed C-130 Hercules. Pacific Air Motive Corporation in Santa Monica, California, PAC Aero, took that development work and created a certified commercial conversion. The first CV-580 conversion flew on the 19th of January, 1960, fitted with Allison 501 D13 turboprop engines rated at 3,750 shaft horsepower each. Certification came on the 21st of April, 1960. Each conversion took approximately 60 days and cost around $228,000, a fraction of the price of a new aircraft. Frontier Airlines was the first to put the type into passenger service in June 1964. Allegheny Airlines followed with a large fleet. 170 CV-340s and CV-440s were eventually converted to 580 standard. The economics told the story that the glamour didn't. When North Central Airlines in the late 1950s was weighing whether to order the new Fokker F-27 turboprop, the aircraft came in at around $1 million per aircraft. Continental Airlines had 5 used CV-340s available for $325,000 each. After North Central spent an additional $80,000 per aircraft, upgrading them to 440 specification and adding weather radar, the total came to $405,000, still saving nearly $600,000 per aircraft against the F-27. The F-27 was an excellent aircraft. It was also considerably more expensive for a carrier that didn't have money to spare. The Convair won on cost, cargo capacity, and the simple fact that the aircraft was already known to work. Convair also built military versions throughout this period. The United States Air Force flew the C-131 Samaritan as an air ambulance and transport. The Navy flew the R-4Y. The T-29 served as a navigation trainer. Over 1,100 aircraft were built in total across all variants by both Convair in San Diego and Canadair in Montreal, serving with over 100 airlines and civil operators on 6 continents. Finnair's CV-440 fleet served until 1980. Air Chatham's in New Zealand retired the last Convair flying scheduled passenger service in 2001. That aircraft had been built as a CV-440 in 1958 for a Brazilian airline and outlived the company that made it by more than 40 years. The Convair 240, 340, and 440 were never going to transform aviation the way the DC-3 had in the 1930s. They were never going to capture public attention the way the Constellation did on its long, elegant routes. They were not going to shock the world the way the Boeing 707 did. Convair knew that from the beginning. American Airlines knew it when they wrote the requirement in 1945. The aircraft was designed to connect places that would otherwise stay disconnected, to give smaller communities access to a pressurized, modern airliner at a price that regional carriers could actually afford to operate. That it did. Across 3 decades of service, through the piston era and into the turboprop conversions that kept flying into the 21st century, the Convair did what useful aircraft do. It showed up. It carried its passengers, it rewarded the crews who prepared for it, and built the networks that smaller communities depended on. Lufthansa put a nation's aviation back in the air with it. United flew it for 16 years without losing a passenger. Finnair flew it for 27 years without an accident. The records are not spectacular. They are simply consistent, which, on the routes the Convair flew, was the only thing that mattered. If this story was worth your time, hit like and subscribe, and drop what you think in the comments.